In this video we are looking at the Voigtlander Bessa R 35mm film camera. This is a 35mm rangefinder camera. And hopefully I'll tell you all you need to know. Hello and welcome, Matt from MrLeica.com. So in today's video I'm going to review one of the cameras I promised to do a review on, and that is the Voigtlander Bessa film camera. And in this video we're looking at the Voigtlander Bessa R model. There are a few different Voigtlander Bessa cameras and I have a few, so I've already done a review on the Voigtlander Bessa R3A. If you've not seen that, I'll try and link it below this video so you can check it out. So first things first, why would you want to consider a Voigtlander Bessa camera? I think the obvious thing that comes to mind is now the price of the Leica rangefinder film camera is becoming so expensive. This gives you kind of a entry point into the amazing world that is rangefinder film cameras. So let's have a look at the price. Okay, I did my usual price check on eBay and they seem to be listed either as body only or body with lens. The Voigtlander Bessa R body only seems to cost around £400, and if you buy the Bessa R with a 35mm f2 scope R lens, which looks the same size as this. This is a Voigtlander Bessa R with a scope R lens that I'm showing at the moment with lens hood. If you want a setup that looks the same size as this will cost you £600 used, including the lens. So that sounds pretty cheap when you're getting a camera and a lens for that price, compared to what you'd pay for say Leica or what you'd pay for say a lens on its own. Now to put that into some context, if you see my Leica M6 videos, you know that Leica M6 cameras cost around £2,000 used, so in comparison the Voigtlander offers you a real good price point. Now in terms of size and weight, the Voigtlander Bessa R cameras are generally much lighter than Leica cameras, because I think traditionally Leica cameras are built to be very well made and kind of as much metal as possible. The kind of heavyweight Leica M3 is a good example. That's the heaviest of the Leica M cameras as far as I'm aware, and of the M cameras that I own, and that is considerably heavier, but equally it's beautifully made. So I guess you can't have both. You can have a lightweight camera such as a Voigtlander, which feels a bit more plasticky, but then you have the beauty of it being so lightweight that it's not kind of dragging on your neck all day or extra weight in your bag if you're trying to pack light, which I tend to be doing most of the time. Yes, it'll feel less well made than a Leica, but the beauty is the weight of the Voigtlander is only 395 grams body only, compared to around 560, 570 grams for Leica M camera, film camera. The Leica CL version, again if you've not seen the video, that is a smaller camera and that is very light. That is your kind of lightweight option in terms of Leica, and I would say the Leica CL shares a few similarities to this camera, so keep watching if you're interested in the Leica CL. So in terms of camera specifications, ignore the lens, it's only there for display purposes. One of the claims to fame for the Voigtlander Bessa R camera, which I should have mentioned, is made by Casina. So Voigtlander is made by Casina, which is a Japanese company. So it's a bit confusing. The original Voigtlander was a German company, and then all the later cameras such as the Bessa range were released in around the year 2000 onwards. These are made in Japan. So although it says Voigtlander Germany on the back, if you then look on the base of the camera, it clearly says made in Japan. So it's not a bad thing. Japanese make some great cameras, so I've got no problem with that. But back to the point I was going to make, one of the claims to fame for the Bessa cameras is the viewfinder is brighter than the Leica M3 and Leica M2 viewfinder. And at the time of production, the Leica M3 and the Leica M2 were the cameras to beat in terms of the best, most beautiful viewfinder, which is a absolutely key aspect when you're using a rangefinder camera, because if you can't see to take your picture, then you've already lost. So this Voigtlander Bessa R has such a clear viewfinder. It's pretty much it's exactly the same looking at you guys on the camera, with camera and without camera. It's totally clear and totally bright, and it's got a really contrasty small rangefinder patch in the center and very clear bright frame lines. Now in terms of frame lines, the Bessa design is different to a Leica design in that you can preset your frame line on the top of the camera. Now the camera will either display a 50mm frame line, a 75mm frame line, or a pair of frame lines together, which is the 35 and the 90. the 35mm frame line is not to the very edge of the viewfinder, which means you can use the entire viewfinder area to kind of estimate 28mm focal length. So it's really good. So you pretty much have 28mm all the way through to 90mm, which sounds nothing special if you use a Leica already, say like M6 or like M4P. If you then compare this to older cameras such as the screw mount cameras that I use, Leica 3 cameras, with those cameras you only have a 50mm frame line, so suddenly having multiple frame lines such as 35mm and 50mm built in is really kind of a nice to have. Talking of screw mount cameras, this is different to a Leica M mount camera, and as the name suggests, M mount, because this is not an end mount lens camera, this is a screw mount camera. So can you see the thread here? So the reason I mentioned now it really is light without a lens on. Now the reason I mentioned the Barnack Leicas or the Leica 3 cameras, such as my Leica 3A, Leica 3G, Leica 2F, all of those cameras are screw mount cameras, meaning lenses such as this screw mount Voigtlander Scope R fits the Leica 3 cameras and the Bessa R camera. So I can share the same lenses across both platforms. So let me just recap that for a moment, because it is a really important factor. If you want to get into film and you say a Leica M10 or a Leica M9, Leica M8, those lenses will not fit this camera. So do not buy a Voigtlander Bessa R camera hoping to be able to shoot film with your existing Leica M cameras, because they won't fit. It doesn't matter if it's a Leica branded Leica lens or if it's a Voigtlander lens or a Zeiss lens. If they are Leica M mounts, they will not fit this camera. There are other Voigtlander cameras which I'll show in future Bessa videos, which do accept like M mount lenses, and a great example of this is the Voigtlander Bessa R3A, which, as I mentioned, I've already done a video on. That will take your lenses if you are like an M shooter, so check that out rather than this one. The Bessa R is really good if you already use screw mount lenses such as the Leica 3 cameras. So getting back to the frame lines, it's got really clear bright frame lines and a really nice viewfinder, and also it's parallax corrected. If you're one of my Patreon followers, you'll know that I wrote a post recently about the problem of non-parallax corrected film cameras, meaning what you see is not what you get. So what this means is, if I focus really close, the frame lines will move to give me the correct composition for a subject close to the camera, and equally if I focus on infinity, the frame lines will move so the composition is correct for infinity. On some film cameras they are not parallax corrected, meaning the frame line stays in the same place, and then if you happen to focus on a close to camera subject, the composition is totally incorrect. It might say the photo is here and the photo might be here. So that's one thing I've had to learn the hard way from using some of my older cameras. So it's worth pointing out that these are parallax corrected, and that is so much better. It means, as I say, what you see is what you get, which is really good for me, because I like to compose in camera rather than kind of crop after. One advantage over the Voigtlander Bessa cameras compared to, say, the older Leica M film cameras, like M2, Leica M3, is these cameras have a built-in light meter. They take two LR44 batteries and they have an LED in the viewfinder, which I find really accurate. You'll have an arrow that way, and then a red dot. When it shows a red dot, that shows that your exposure is correct, and you can kind of take the shot if that's the exposure you're planning to use. I'll be honest, I'm just in the habit of using a handheld Sekonic light meter, so I'm often using both, but I've not found any issues with the light meter in camera. Another great advantage over Voigtlander Bessa cameras such as the Bessa R is the maximum shutter speed is 1/2000, which means on a bright sunny day the Leica M film cameras top out at 1/1000, and that's often not fast enough if you're using fast lenses. So a maximum shutter speed of 1/2000 is kind of a welcome addition for me personally. As I say, I find 1000 not fast enough. A second welcome addition is this red number. The 1/125 is the maximum flash sync speed of a Voigtlander film camera. This again is another advantage over shooting with a Bessa compared to a Leica. All Leica M film cameras sync at 1/50th, and that is not fast enough for kind of controlling ambient light and doing flash photography. So another welcome advantage. So you've got a lightweight camera with a faster maximum flash sync speed, with a faster maximum shutter speed, with a built-in light meter, with all the frame lines you'll probably need. And there are still more benefits to come. Another benefit is, unlike a film camera where you load film from the base plate and the door kind of opens, I don't want to show you, but I've done videos on how to load film into a Leica camera, so I can kind of link one here somewhere. Basically, Leica M film cameras are a bit quirky in the way you load film compared to, say, an SLR. If you're used to shooting with an SLR film camera, you might find it a bit fiddly. But another benefit of the Voigtlander Bessa R is you load film like you would a SLR camera. So by that I mean you have an additional advantage of the window in the back door, meaning you can see what film is loaded. You cannot do that with a Leica M film camera. Once the film's inside, if like me you use multiple bodies, unless you make a note, if you then come back to using your camera in 6 months' time, assuming you're kind of cycling through different film cameras, which I often do, you have no idea what film is in the camera. So by having a window on the back of the camera, you always know at any time what film is loaded, which is another big plus for me. So as you can see, there's film on the camera, so I cannot open it to show you, but you can pretty much imagine there's a hinged door here, and the door just opens, and then it just looks like a normal SLR camera inside. It doesn't get any easier in terms of film loading. Drop your film in, pull it across, clip onto the side, shut the door. It really is as easy as it gets in terms of loading film. So I guess that's another benefit, especially if you're new to film photography. So you probably think I'm really bigging up this Voigtlander Bessa R camera. So I guess the question you might have is, well, why is it so cheap compared to a Leica camera? Why is a Leica camera so much better? And why don't I personally sell my Leica cameras and just keep Voigtlanders? If I'm saying they're that amazing. They are really good and they do have their strengths, but they also have some weaknesses. I would say compared to Leica, we've talked about some of the strengths already, but the obvious ones for me would be build quality of a Leica is much better, and it hopefully, if you get something like a Leica M3 or a Leica M2, it should pretty much last you a lifetime. You'll need to kind of do servicing at certain intervals, but they really are built to last. The same as the Barnett Leicas, I would say those cameras are built to last as well. I don't think Voigtlander film cameras are built to last. They are just too plastic and kind of disposable feeling. It might just be the fact that they are lightweight, and hopefully it will last me a lifetime, but that will be my first point. And then the second point in terms of why it's not suitable for every application and why I bought it. The viewfinder is amazing, and the rangefinder patch is very sharp, but the rangefinder accuracy is not good. So what I mean by this is, I'm going to do a video on this at some point. It's called the effective base length, and what that means is the closer these windows are together, the less accurate your rangefinder. So these cameras, in my mind, are perfect if you shoot, say, street photography or wide angle lenses, say 28mm, 35mm, or if you shoot everything at f8 or potentially 5.6. And if you're only really shooting distant subjects, such as you never shoot closer than 3 meters, for example, maybe you'll shoot street and you do kind of scenes rather than characters in the street, and so you're all shooting maybe close to infinity with a 28mm lens. If you shoot like that, this is absolutely perfect, because one, it's super lightweight, two, you've got 28mm frame lines more or less built in, and they are so cheap you don't need to worry about having it with you. And I don't know, going down some dodgy street and worrying that if you've got a Leica in your hand you might feel potentially more worried or threatened. If you're doing street stuff or anything with a wide lens, this is a kind of no-brainer. If you're doing travel photography, if you're climbing up mountains and you don't want to carry the weight of a well-made Leica, again, perfect camera. If you run or cycle and want to take a camera with you, again, perfect camera. That's why I bought this particularly for myself. So why is it not perfect? It's not perfect for portraits. It's not perfect for shooting close up with fast lenses, because the rangefinder is not accurate enough. The effective base length, which is the distance between, as I say, the two windows, is 50% less approximately than a Leica camera. So what that means is, in kind of reality, when you look through the viewfinder, it doesn't look very magnified, and it means you cannot like critically focus, because you cannot see close enough to critically focus. I think the perfect example of this, of a camera which is, how to say, as bad as this camera in that regard, is the Leica CL or the Minolta CLE. Those viewfinders are nice and bright, but the rangefinder is so non-accurate that I just gave up. I don't use mine for portraits at all. It's just, I just cannot see to focus. So I'd say the CL and the Voigtlander Bessa R are at, say, this end of the scale over here as the least ideal cameras to shoot portraits. If you shoot like me, as I say, fast lenses, f1.4, 35mm 1.2, anything with a wide maximum aperture, those are not suited for this camera. The best alternative would be, say, Leica M6. That's, in my mind, number one as the best camera to have for fast lenses and portraits, which is why I use that for fast lenses and portraits. This is my running, cycling, travel camera, and my M3 is my portrait camera. Yes, I obviously have some grey area where I will try and do some portraits with this, but I'll purposely not try and shoot close up with a fast lens because there's no point, I just can't see. So I'll maybe shoot at, say, a 35mm at f2.8, slightly further back, for example. So sorry for that ramble, but hopefully that shows you the clear reasons why I have both camera systems. Not good for portraits, very good for everything else. And just in terms of the viewfinder, it's got a 0.68 magnification, and the lens mount focuses to 0.9 meters close focus. So compare that to most Leica M cameras, which go as close as 0.7 meters. This is 0.9 meters. Not a huge difference, but noticeable if you're trying to work very close at 0.7 meters. I guess quickly just to look at a few other features. You have the strap lugs on the front. Now I mentioned this in the Voigtlander Bessa R3A review, I think. Because they are mounted on the front and not the side, it means when you have the camera around your neck, if you're using a neck strap, it tends to fall like this against your body because the strap will pull up like this, obviously on both sides, whereas if it was in the middle, it'd pull straight. Now I've heard people complain about this, but personally I use wrist straps, so it's no issue for me at all. Other features: to rewind the film, it has a recessed film rewind crank, if you can see that. So when you do want to rewind your film, obviously just turn your rewind crank and then it drops away out of sight when you don't need it. Well, more or less out of sight. It has a standard film advance crank shutter release button, which is threaded, so you can thread in a cable release. Hot shoe, as you may know from my Leica M2, Leica M3 video if you've seen that, and also the Leica 3 camera videos. If you're new to photography, a lot of cameras will have this metal thing on the top of the camera. What's different is vintage cameras, it is not powered, meaning if you put a flash on it, when you take a photo it won't flash. That's called a cold shoe. On the later cameras it's called a hot shoe, which means it is powered, which means when you press the shutter it will flash. This is a hot shoe, meaning it works all with speed lights. And in contrast, as I say, Leica M2, Leica M3, Leica 3, all the Leica 3 cameras, those are cold shoes, meaning it won't fire your flash. For cameras like that, there's also a PC sync port on the side of the camera, meaning if you want to shoot with, say, studio strobes, you just attach your PC sync cable from here to your studio light in the room. If this is a cold shoe, the way you get around it is you put a small cable from the PC sync port into the back of the flash, and that's how you use a cold shoe. But as I say, this is a hot shoe, so ignore that comment. There is a film counter on the top, and that automatically resets, which again is another nice advantage. If like me, you're used to really vintage cameras, because on some of the old cameras they don't automatically reset. So then if you're not in the habit of resetting, you forget, and then you don't know how many photos you've taken and how many photos you have left. On the base you have the tripod socket, and that cover is for your batteries. So you unscrew that and load, as I say, 2 LR44 batteries, which power the light meter. And when you finish your roll of film and you want to rewind the film, press this button, the same design as on many cameras, and then you can turn the crank to rewind the film. Okay, so hopefully I haven't missed anything. If I have, let me know in the comments. In spite of the few mentioned negatives, I really enjoy these cameras and I wouldn't look to sell it at any point, despite owning Leicas and other cameras. So would I recommend the Voigtlander Bessa R? Definitely. I think if you like the idea of a rangefinder camera to give you a taste of what it might be like if you want to shoot a Leica in the future, a very good camera to have. If you already shoot with Leica 3 cameras and you want to shoot with 35mm lenses, which is what I wanted to do, and also 28mm lenses, again a great camera to have, because as I say, you've got 35mm frame lines built in and parallax corrected, whereas if you use a hot shoe 35mm finder on the top of your Leica 3 camera, that's not parallax corrected, and then you need to then think to compensate, which I often forgot to do. So this works for me, being a more simple person. So as I say, I'd recommend this for everything except portraits, and I'm a portrait photographer, but occasionally I do other stuff as well. And it also depends on what you class as portraits. If you do environmental portraits and you shoot at f2.8, f4, f5.6, brilliant camera to have, really good. It's going to be no worse than shooting with a Mamiya 7, for example. A lot of cameras are much worse in terms of not ideal for portraits than say the Leica M3 or Leica M film cameras. Leica M cameras are particularly great for portraits, which is probably why I like them. You could argue that SLR cameras are even better, and that is potentially true in some instances, but for a rangefinder platform, Leica M cameras tend to be better than many other rangefinder cameras. Okay, so I think I covered as many things as I can think of. I'll include now some example photos, obviously all shot on film, being a film camera. When I get a chance, I'll do a follow-up blog post on mrleica.com, and I'll include example photos with the focal length I shot the photos on, so you can see if it was shot on a 28mm lens, 35mm lens, etc, etc. If you've already got the Voigtlander Bessa R, again, which I've already done a review on, this is like a Voigtlander Bessa R with frame lines. So if you like the weight and the feel of the Voigtlander Bessa R camera, you would really like this. It's kind of your second better camera to have, because you can use the same lenses, but you have the benefit of it having a built-in rangefinder viewfinder, so you can actually see to compose and focus your images. If you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button and turn it blue, as they say. And if you enjoy this type of content, feel free to subscribe, because there's plenty more to come. If you personally shoot with Voigtlander Bessa cameras, or you have an interest in Voigtlander Bessa cameras, drop me a message in the comment, and I'll be happy to answer any questions I can if I know the answer. And if not, I'm sure a smarter person than me reading the comments will answer your question. These videos seem to attract a really nice kind of group of people, and there's quite a nice community kind of going on in the comments. So if I don't answer your question, someone else tends to do so. So thank you to everyone that contributes to the comments on my videos. And lastly, a big thanks to my patrons. As mentioned in previous videos, I post an additional 2+ videos a week onto the Patreon platform, and that's a platform which I'm using now more for teaching and I guess inspiring, and kind of giving you guys a taster of what life is like behind the scenes when I'm working with models. If any of that sounds of interest, do come and join us. Thanks for watching. Bye.